You won't believe what happened when a black mechanic tried to get service at a car dealership. He was turned away, but then he revealed a secret that completely flipped the script. Find out what happened in this shocking story. Sorry, we can't take this car in today. The schedule is completely booked. The voice of Karen White, the receptionist at Sterling Auto Dealership, was flat, almost devoid of emotion, and her eyes didn't even bother to leave her computer screen to look directly at the black man standing patiently at the counter. The man around 40, wearing a faded dark blue mechanic's uniform, stained with a few grease spots, frowned slightly. Booked solid, but I called last week to make an appointment for repairs. My car's transmission is shot. A pretty serious problem needs to be fixed urgently. Karen White perfunctorily flipped through a few pages in the appointment book, barely glancing at it. I'm very sorry, but your name isn't written in here. There must have been some kind of mistake on your end. You could try your luck at another garage in the city. Her voice remained cold, without a hint of willingness to help or investigate further. Just then, Richard Rick Sterling, the dealership manager, a portly white man around 45 with a beer belly prominent under his expensive shirt, emerged from his private office. He crossed his arms, looking the black mechanic up and down, with a scrutinizing, appraising gaze, making no effort to hide the suspicion and a touch of contempt evident on his face. Was this outright refusal truly just a simple clerical error in recording the appointment? Or was it a subtle manifestation, a disguised form of discrimination based on skin color and appearance? And did the people working at this luxury car dealership have any idea that they had just treated a man with an extraordinary past, someone they should never have underestimated so poorly? The black mechanic's name was Marcus Mack Johnson, 38 years old. Currently, he was a skilled auto mechanic, the owner of a small but reputable repair shop in the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina. Mack's garage, though not large and lacking the latest high-tech equipment, was well known in the local community for his high skill level, absolute honesty in his work, and always fair and reasonable repair prices. He never cheated or fabricated problems with customers' cars. His annual income from the garage was only around $60,000, enough to support himself and his small family with a simple, quiet life. But few knew that behind the exterior of a diligent, quiet mechanic, Marcus Mack Johnson had an incredibly special and proud past. Before deciding to become a mechanic, Mack had served a full 10 years in the United States Navy, and not just as an ordinary sailor. He was an elite member of the SEALs Sea, Air, and Land teams, one of the most elite and combat-ready special operations forces in the world. He had participated in countless secret missions, dangerous operations in conflict hotspots across the globe, from the harsh deserts of the Middle East to the treacherous mountains of Afghanistan. He had been honorably discharged with numerous high medals, recognizing his bravery and outstanding contributions, along with the absolute respect and admiration of the comrades who had faced life and death with him. However, those years of military service had also left Mack with many scars, both physical and deep psychological wounds. He chose to become a mechanic, a job requiring meticulousness, logic, and intense focus, not only because it was his childhood passion, but also because he wanted to find a quieter life, a sense of peace after years of confronting danger and violence. The reason Mack Johnson was at Sterling Auto that morning was because his old Ford F-150 pickup truck, a vehicle he considered a companion and his primary means of getting to work and transporting repair tools, had suddenly suffered a failed automatic transmission. This was a rather complex technical issue requiring specialized diagnostic and repair equipment that his small garage wasn't fully equipped with. Sterling Auto was an official authorized Ford dealership in Charlotte, and according to Mack's research, they had a reputation for excellent Ford repairs, albeit with somewhat expensive service prices. He had carefully called to schedule a repair appointment for his truck the previous week and had received confirmation from the phone operator for this morning. Mack's appearance when he arrived at the dealership was unremarkable. He was a tall man with a strong, solid build, though he tried to downplay the rippling muscles of a former special ops soldier. His skin was a healthy dark tan, his large hands rough and calloused from years of wielding wrenches and screwdrivers. He wore a dark blue work uniform, faded with time, and still bearing a few grease stains, as he had just finished working hard at his own garage and then rushed his ailing truck here to make the appointment. He had a small, very discreet tattoo of an anchor and a trident, the sacred symbol of the Navy SEALs hidden on his right bicep, a tattoo he usually tried to keep covered by his sleeve as a way to keep a part of his past to himself. Richard "Rick" Sterling, around 45, was currently the manager of Sterling Auto. Rumor had it that the dealership was part of his family's assets, but others said he was just an employee promoted to manager thanks to his sycophancy and a bit of luck. Regardless, Sterling was an incredibly arrogant, domineering man who always looked down on manual laborers and harbored deep-seated prejudices against people of color. In his eyes, people like Marcus Johnson didn't deserve the high-end professional services of the luxury car dealership he managed. He always tried to assert his authority and enjoyed ordering others around. Karen White, the receptionist, around 30 white with a rather attractive appearance and carefully styled blonde hair, had an extremely cold, unfriendly demeanor, especially towards customers she deemed not classy or without money. She slavishly followed all of Richard Sterling's instructions and often acted as a filter for customers based on her personal prejudices and warped standards. The work culture at Sterling Auto under Richard Sterling's management had gradually developed a subtle form of customer discrimination. They always prioritized serving wealthy white customers, those who drove luxury cars and wore designer clothes. For other customers, especially people of color or those whose appearance didn't meet their standards of presentability, they often found ways to politely refuse service or deliberately create difficulties and delays to make customers give up and leave. Returning to the tense situation at the reception counter, Marcus "Mac" Johnson tried to remain calm and explain again to Karen White. "I'm sure I made an appointment. My name is Marcus Johnson, and I scheduled a transmission repair for a Ford F-150. Could you please double-check the system one more time? Perhaps you overlooked it?" Karen White again listlessly flipped through a few pages of the book, her eyes still glued to the computer screen. "I've checked very carefully, sir. Your name is absolutely not in today's schedule. You must have confused us with some other garage. Or perhaps our phone operator last week wrote down your name or phone number incorrectly." She said, her voice still flat, with no intention of helping or investigating further to resolve the customer's issue. Richard Sterling, having observed enough, stepped out from his office and interjected into the conversation with a patronizing air. "What's all the commotion out here, Karen?" He looked Mac up and down with a judgmental gaze, making no effort to hide his disdain. "Hello, sir," he said, his tone slightly sarcastic. "We're very sorry, but as my employee said, there really isn't a single open spot in the repair schedule today. You can kindly come back next week, or perhaps it would be best if you found somewhere else somewhere more suitable for the current condition of your vehicle." Sterling's words, especially the phrase, "condition of your vehicle," carried a clear discriminatory and mocking undertone. Marcus "Mac" Johnson began to feel a growing unease and a touch of anger. He was naturally a very patient and calm person, a trait honed through years of military service. But this unjust treatment and condescending attitude made it impossible for him to remain silent any longer. "I don't think there's any confusion here, Mr. Manager," Mac said, his voice still calm but with an added firmness. "I confirmed my appointment very clearly over the phone. My truck really needs to be repaired, and as far as I know, this is an official authorized Ford dealership." Richard Sterling shrugged indifferently, feigning disinterest. "Rules are rules, sir. If your name isn't in the appointment book, we can't take your car. Unless—" he paused, a cunning glint in his eyes. "Unless you're willing to pay an additional special priority fee, so we can consider making an exception for your case." This was clearly a form of extortion, a sophisticated and blatant way to make illicit money. Marcus "Mac" Johnson looked directly into Sterling's eyes without flinching. "I will never pay any such unreasonable fee. I am only asking for the repair service I scheduled in advance like any other normal customer. If you genuinely can't find my appointment in your system, then let me speak to the highest manager here so I can present and resolve this issue directly." Mac's firm and unwavering attitude made Richard Sterling even more annoyed and angry. He wasn't used to being challenged and demanded of by someone he considered inferior, a dusty black mechanic. "I am the manager here, do you hear me?" Sterling growled. "And I've made it very clear we can't help you today. Now please leave, don't stand here wasting our precious time and that of our other important customers." He deliberately emphasized the phrase, "other important customers," as a way to further belittle and discriminate against Mac. Mac Johnson didn't back down. He knew he was in the right. He calmly took out his old cell phone, opened his call history, and showed the screen to Karen White. "Here, clear proof. This is Sterling Auto's phone number, and this is the time I called to make an appointment last week. You can absolutely check the dealership's incoming call log if you wish." Mac Johnson, presenting concrete evidence of the appointment call, made Karen White a bit flustered and uneasy. She glanced at Richard Sterling, awaiting instructions, but Sterling, instead of having it checked immediately, dismissed it curtly. "Who knows what you called here to say?" he said, his voice full of contempt. "Maybe you just called to ask about service prices and that was it. Stop trying to make excuses and play games here." Richard Sterling began to raise his voice, his demeanor becoming aggressive and out of control. "I've made it very clear that we will not repair your car today. Do you understand English? If you don't leave immediately, I'll be forced to call the police to deal with you for disturbing the public order." He deliberately spoke loudly so that those around could hear, aiming to pressure and embarrass Mac. Mac Johnson still managed to maintain an astonishing composure, though anger was beginning to boil within him. His voice now became incredibly firm and steely. "Go ahead and call the police, Mr. Sterling. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just standing here demanding the legitimate rights of a customer who made an appointment in advance, and I reaffirm I will not go anywhere until this matter is resolved fairly and satisfactorily." A few customers browsing in the showroom and some other dealership employees began to notice the escalating argument. The atmosphere in the waiting room became extremely tense and stifling. Everyone was curious to know what was happening. Seeing Richard Sterling remain stubborn and intent on escalating the situation, Mac Johnson sighed softly. He really didn't want to resort to this, didn't want to dredge up memories of the past, but perhaps in this situation, he had no other choice. "Listen, Mr. Sterling." Mac said, his voice low and even, but carrying a special weight and invisible authority that commanded attention. "I really don't want to blow this up. I just want my pickup truck fixed properly, nothing more, nothing less. I've been in far worse places than this shiny, polished dealership of yours. I've also faced far more dangerous and brutal people than you. And through those experiences, I've learned something very important. Fairness and mutual respect are the most basic things, the foundation of all relationships in this society." With that, he gently rolled up one sleeve of his work uniform, just a little enough to reveal a very small part of the faded tattoo on his strong bicep, the familiar image of an anchor and a sharp trident, the sacred symbol of the Navy SEALs. It was a symbol that only those who had served in the military, especially those in Special Operations Forces, would immediately recognize its true meaning and weight. "I've served this country for many years, Mr. Sterling, shed blood and sacrificed to protect the very freedoms you enjoy today. I think at the very least I don't deserve to be treated so unfairly and disrespectfully." Richard Sterling and Karen White looked at the tattoo on Mac's arm with incomprehension, then looked at him with even more contempt and ridicule. To them, shallow and prejudiced, it was just a meaningless tattoo, a crude drawing by a dusty mechanic trying to act tough. Sterling let out a malicious chuckle. "Oh, so you're a veteran, huh? Sounds impressive. But that means nothing here, pal. It doesn't mean you have the right to demand whatever you want at this dealership. This is a private business. We have every right to refuse service to anyone we don't want to. Now get out of my sight before I really lose it." He jutted out his chin, then turned his back, signaling Karen White to call dealership security. Just as the situation was reaching its peak tension with security about to be called, Mr. Arthur Henderson, the actual owner of the Sterling auto dealership chain, an elderly man around 70 with hair as white as snow, but still spry and with sharp, distinguished eyes, happened to be at the dealership for a routine inspection. He heard the commotion and arguing coming from the showroom and reception area and quickly went to see what was wrong. Mr. Henderson saw Marcus "Mac" Johnson standing opposite Richard Sterling, the manager he had entrusted. Sterling was now fuming, his face red with anger. "What's going on here, Rick?" Mr. Henderson asked, his voice low and somewhat stern. Richard Sterling, seeing his boss, quickly changed his demeanor, trying to make himself look right. He hastily explained, trying to shift all the blame to Mac. "Mr. Henderson, it's nothing serious. This man is just deliberately causing a disturbance. He keeps insisting we fix his car immediately even though he has no prior appointment." Marcus "Mac" Johnson politely but firmly interrupted Sterling. He calmly recounted the entire incident from the beginning to Mr. Henderson, from calling to make the appointment being unreasonably refused by the receptionist to Richard Sterling's arrogant attitude and derogatory remarks. He also presented the proof of his appointment call on his phone. Mr. Arthur Henderson listened carefully, not missing a single detail. His gaze shifted from Mac to Sterling, then to Karen White, cowering in a corner. When Marcus "Mac" Johnson inadvertently revealed the tattoo on his bicep again, as he held up his phone for Mr. Henderson to see, the elderly chairman's eyes suddenly froze. There was something very familiar, something that stirred the veteran's heart within him. Mr. Arthur Henderson was a former high-ranking officer in the United States Marine Corps, having fought in some of the fiercest battles of the Vietnam War. He immediately recognized the meaning of that symbol, a symbol he had seen on the arms of the bravest soldiers. "Hold on a minute," Mr. Henderson said, his voice suddenly becoming serious and somewhat emotional. He looked directly at Marcus "Mac" Johnson. "That tattoo on your arm, is that—" Marcus "Mac" Johnson looked at Mr. Henderson, a flicker of surprise on his face, then he nodded slightly. "Yes, sir. It's the symbol of Team 3 Bravo Platoon." Mr. Arthur Henderson's face instantly changed. His eyes widened, staring at Mac unblinkingly. He knew very well that Team 3 was one of the most elite, combat-proven, and legendary SEAL units in the U.S. Navy, a unit that had achieved countless glorious victories. "Good heavens!" Mr. Henderson exclaimed, his voice full of astonishment and disbelief. "So, you're a Navy SEAL?" Both Richard Sterling and Karen White stood frozen like statues. The air in the luxury car showroom suddenly seemed to solidify. They couldn't believe what they had just heard. The black mechanic they had just scorned and insulted was a former Navy SEAL. Mr. Arthur Henderson, after the initial shock, quickly regained his composure. He turned to Richard Sterling, his eyes no longer calm but filled with extreme anger and disappointment. "Rick, what in God's name have you done? Do you have any idea who you just treated like this? Do you know who you just insulted?" Richard Sterling stammered, his face, pale, cold sweat beading on his forehead. "Sir, Mr. Chairman, I really didn't know. I had no idea he was—" Karen White, her face as white as a sheet, trembled in a corner, not daring to look up at anyone. Mr. Henderson didn't let them finish. His voice boomed steely and powerful, drowning out the street noise from outside. "A Navy SEAL, a true hero of this country, a man who put his life on the line in the most dangerous places to protect our peace, and you dared to treat him like a beggar on the street, like a criminal trying to cause trouble. Do you have any shred of decency, any self-respect left as human beings?" Then he turned to Marcus. "Mac Johnson, his voice instantly changing, becoming incredibly respectful, sincere, and full of remorse. "Sir, Mr. Johnson, is it? I am Arthur Henderson, the owner of this dealership chain. On behalf of the entire staff of Sterling Auto, and on my own behalf, I offer you my sincerest apologies for the terrible, unprofessional, and utterly shameful treatment by my employees. This is completely unacceptable and indelible stain on our operational history." Marcus Mac Johnson looked at Mr. Henderson, the tension and anger on his face somewhat softened. He sensed the sincerity in the elderly chairman's words and demeanor. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson, for understanding. Actually, I don't need any special treatment or privileges. I just want my pickup truck fixed properly according to the appointment I made, and more importantly, I want to be treated with respect and fairness like any other normal customer who comes here." He paused for a moment, then added resolutely, "And I also hope that today's unfortunate incident will be a profound lesson for all your employees, a lesson on how to treat everyone fairly and respectfully regardless of who they are, what they look like, what they do for a living, or where they come from. Discrimination in any form is unacceptable anywhere in this country." Mr. Arthur Henderson nodded decisively, his eyes full of agreement. "You are absolutely right, Mr. Johnson. Absolutely right. Nothing like this will ever happen again at any of my dealerships, I assure you." Then he turned to Richard Sterling and Karen White, who were still trembling and terrified. "Rick, you're fired, effective immediately, no more explanations or excuses. Clean out your personal belongings and leave today. Karen, you too. I cannot tolerate employees with discriminatory attitudes who disrespect customers and severely damage the company's reputation in my team." Richard Sterling and Karen White were stunned, their faces aghast. They tried to plead to explain, but Mr. Arthur Henderson did not change his decision. He was an old soldier. He understood the value of honor, fairness, and self-respect. He could not condone such shameful behavior. Afterward, Mr. Henderson personally escorted Marcus Mac Johnson to the dealership's service area. He instructed the head mechanic, an experienced master technician, to prioritize the inspection and repair of Mac's Ford F-150 immediately with the best possible quality. The entire cost of repairing Mac's truck would be covered by Sterling Auto as a sincere apology and small compensation for what Mac had endured. While Mac's truck was being inspected and repaired by skilled technicians, Mr. Arthur Henderson invited Mac into his private office. He personally brewed a pot of good tea and chatted with Mac very openly and cordially. He expressed his deep admiration for what Marcus Mac Johnson and his SEAL comrades had contributed and sacrificed for the country. He shared his own memories from his time in the Marines, and the two men, though from different generations, found common ground and mutual respect. Marcus Mac Johnson also shared a little about his life after leaving the service, about his passion for auto repair, a job that helped him find peace and meaning in everyday life. He showed no arrogance or entitlement, though he certainly had the right to. He just wanted to live a simple life and be treated fairly. Many other employees at Sterling Auto, after learning the whole story and the true identity of the black mechanic, looked at Marcus Mac Johnson with entirely different eyes. In their gazes there was respect, admiration, and also a bit of shame and remorse for what had happened to him at their own workplace. The noisy and unpleasant incident at Sterling Auto finally came to a close. Richard Sterling and Karen White paid a very high price for their discriminatory behavior and arrogant attitude. They lost their jobs and would undoubtedly face great difficulty finding new employment with such a stain on their records. It was truly a lesson they would never forget. Marcus Mac Johnson's Ford F-150 was carefully, meticulously, and quickly repaired by Sterling Auto's technicians. The transmission ran smoothly again. Mr. Arthur Henderson personally saw Mac off to his truck once again, sincerely apologizing and thanking him for his magnanimity. He promised to overhaul the entire dealership system, ensuring that discrimination would never happen again. Marcus Mac Johnson accepted no other compensation beyond the free repair of his truck. For him, the most important thing was that justice had been restored, and those in the wrong had been held accountable for their actions. He drove his carefully repaired truck back to his small garage, back to his quiet daily work, with his familiar wrenches, screwdrivers, and the smell of grease. Mr. Arthur Henderson kept his promise. Soon after, he organized retraining sessions for all employees in the Sterling Auto dealership system on customer service attitudes, anti-discrimination regulations, and the importance of building a civilized, respectful work environment. He also had a large sign prominently displayed at the reception counters of all dealerships with a very clear message. At Sterling Auto, we are committed to serving everyone with the utmost respect, fairness, and professionalism. If this story were to spread, it would undoubtedly receive community support and agreement. People would praise Mr. Arthur Henderson's decisive and fair actions, and also express admiration for the steadfastness and self-respect of the mechanic former Navy SEAL Marcus Mac Johnson. It would also serve as a profound reminder to everyone about the harmful prejudices that still exist in society and the necessity of always treating everyone with equality and respect. Never judge another person solely by their outward appearance, by the clothes they wear, their skin color, or their job. Because every human being has their own story, their own value that we can never fully know. Respect and fairness must be the foundation of all good relationships in society, including in business and service. And those who have sacrificed their youth, shed their blood for the peace of the country, deserve our special respect and deep gratitude, never contempt or discrimination. What do you think about how Marcus Mac Johnson handled this tense situation at the car dealership? Should he have chosen to reveal his former Navy SEAL identity sooner to resolve the issue more quickly? If you were Mr. Arthur Henderson, the owner of the dealership, would you have made similar decisions, or would you have handled your employees and Marcus Mac Johnson differently? Does this story make you think further about the prejudices that still exist in our society today? And what can each of us do to contribute to building a fair, respectful living and working environment where there is no longer room for discrimination,